First place goes to pasta dish number 5.
Yeah!
In the house!
Very nice.
Hang me home, sister! Hey junkies, Man Dullins. We're at the meat house here in St. Pete. We're gonna make some curry goat. So in order to do so, you need goat. And this is where we're gonna get our goat. We got our goat home. It's frozen, chopped up in cubes. We need to defrost this. So the most effective way of really defrosting any meat is by using water. So we're going to take this, we're going to put it in our pot, and we are going to fill our pot, enough water to cover it, and once everything is thawed out, we will then begin seasoning the goat. Now let's talk about goat for a sec. Goat is one of those things, not unlike soccer, very popular everywhere else in the world, not so much in the US. The closest thing we have to it is lamb. So, not necessarily a rule of thumb, but if you don't like lamb, don't count on liking goat. Very gamey, either you like the taste or not. Very difficult to cover up the taste through flavoring, but one of the main things is seasoning the goat, which again, once it defrosts and comes room temperature, will do so. The preparation for curry goat starts days in advance. I don't want you to think this is something you do all at once. Today is Thursday. We'll be making this on Saturday, so bringing the frozen chopped up goat to room temp, seasoning it, and then we'll let that sit and marinate for a couple of days, then get the stew working Saturday morning. Also, let's chat about the seasoning we'll be using all throughout the curry goat for marinating the actual meat itself to the stew once we chop up our vegetables and get those in. This again is a proprietary blend that I make. To be clear, this is a Jamaican curry stew. As I've mentioned in the past, I am half Jamaican, half Sicilian. So whereas it's fun combining those two flavors, this is most certainly going to lean much more towards the Jamaican side of things. So this hot curry powder, in it, you know, curry is always a combination of a million different spices and whatnot, not unlike a mole in Mexican, Latin American cultures. But in this curry, you're going to have turmeric, salt, coriander, pepper, garlic, of course allspice, thyme, fenugreek, mustard, ginger, scallion. I have habanero powder that I put in this as well. You see thyme, a lot of clove, cinnamon, cardamom, and anise as well. You can see the star anise. But the seasoning, very important in any type of curry you make. The seasoning is what really differentiates the type of curry you're going to make. But again, this is a Jamaican hot curry. That's how I make my curry goat. And you'll be seeing this spice all throughout the process. Our goat is now defrosted and unfrozen. I think that's the sound a goat makes. I barely passed kindergarten. But it's ready to be seasoned, and we are going to absolutely season the shit out of it with both salt, hit it with some sea salt, and our seasoning. So again, we're going to be very liberal with the seasoning. We're going to mix it up, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like when we're done thoroughly seasoning the goat. The goat is thoroughly seasoned with our hot curry blend of spices. Really wish you junkies were able to smell this right now. It is absolutely fantastic. You have, of course, the curry and everything that goes into that, the cumin, a lot of the more fall-like spices, so like the cinnamon, the cardamom, the clove. It's really one hell of a party right now going on in my nose. So after we thoroughly season this, as you can see here, we're going to get this into the fridge, and this is all going to hang out and marinate for a couple of days. And also the added benefit too, not only to flavor the meat, but also to flavor the oil, the fat that we'll be cooking this in when we saute it off in a couple of days from now. We touched on this a little bit in the Sicilian bean stew video, but it's always very important to season the oil that you'll be cooking in. So aside from the garlic, fresh ginger, and Scotch bonnets that we'll be using to season the oil, a lot of the seasoning off of the goat will also season the oil for when we'll then put our vegetables in. So stay tuned. Time for the seasoned goat to go in the fridge for the next couple of days to get nice and marinate. There is prep work for the curry goat. Don't want you junkies to think this all occurred over the span of a couple of hours. Also, please note the bag that the curry goat is in seasoning and marinating in is one of those free bags that you take for your vegetables. This entire series is about the frugal life. There's a little junk hack right there. A lot of folks don't think Man Dullins is an environmentalist. We absolutely are here. We care very much about the trees and feminism. Another step you want to take in preparation of your curry goat is hydrating your lentils. Lentils are something I do add to my curry goat. I don't know how traditional that may be. It's very likely not traditional at all, but I always have lentils on hand. It's part of the frugal lifestyle. You could very easily swap out the goat and just keep the lentils. Of course, the flavor will be different, but it doesn't make it any less delicious. So we're gonna hydrate our lentils. It's not rocket science, right? Lentils, water, and then you're going to let these hang out in the fridge. All the lentils are in the pool, ready for the fridge for the next couple of days. Notice how we're reusing a Greek yogurt container. Why pay for Tupperware when you could just reuse plastic? That's the frugal life, junkies. Here's that very hot habanero powder that I mentioned earlier. Scotch bonnet pepper powder to be exact. The Scotch bonnet is a hotter variant of the habanero. Those that know there is a very distinct difference between the habanero and the Scotch bonnet. And when I lay out the vegetables that will be going in the stew, you'll see exactly how we season our oil, and we'll do so by using garlic, ginger, fresh ginger, and of course fresh Scotch bonnet peppers. Today is the day, junkies. We are going to make our curry goat. The oil we're going to be using to fry up our goat is going to be this organic virgin coconut oil, cold pressed and unrefined. We have our goat that's been marinating for the past couple of days, coming to room temp. The oil I cranked up is getting nice and hot, so as soon as this comes to temperature, we'll start frying off our goat. Really wish you junkies could smell this right now. You got those lovely scents from the cardamom, the cloves, the cinnamon. The oil is getting nice and seasoned. That is going to be a recurring theme. So after we finish frying up the rest of our goat here, we're going to pull it out, and then we're going to hit the oil with some garlic, fresh ginger, and Scotch bonnet peppers. As we finish cooking off our goat, we'll get started on the paste we'll be making to further season our oil. We got some fresh ginger, some garlic, and some Scotch bonnets. Now, the Scotch bonnet is a specific variety of the habanero pepper. It is among the hottest pepper in the world. So when you handle them, you want to be very mindful. If you're a novice, you don't use them too much. You definitely want to wear gloves. Either way, you want to keep that top of mind. The oils from the capsaicin really don't wash off, and you want to be careful of what you touch when you're using the Scotch bonnets. Certainly, you don't want to be touching your junk afterwards. So let's chop this up into a paste, and we'll continue to season our oil after we get done with our goat. Here's a paste we made with the fresh ginger, garlic, and Scotch bonnets. We're going to get this into our pot. See if we could do this on one swipe. Look at that. We're going to bring this into the pot. Also notice how seasoned that oil is already, that coconut oil. All those lovely bits from the goat are on the bottom. So by introducing the paste we just made, we're going to lift those flavor bits from the bottom and further season the oil. There's about to be some vegetable carnage. Now, a curry doesn't just refer to the spices that are being used in the dish. Essentially, a curry is a stew, right? So with any stew, you're going to have a amalgamation of vegetables that you're going to put in it. So as I alluded to in prior videos, this very easily could be a vegan dish. You just omit the goat because the cream we'd be using, if you want to call it cream, is coconut milk. And you would still use the lentils. Again, I use lentils with my curry goat. Not quite sure how traditional it is. Very likely it isn't. But aside from that, we have our plantains, butternut squash, red onion, jalapeno peppers, tomato. This is a chayote. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but it's essentially a squash. I think the meaning, the name of the squash is something vulgar. You could use your imagination why, but don't quote me on that, but I do believe it has a funny name. We have our sweet potato, we have our cabbage, carrots, celery, and we're going to be chopping all these vegetables up with our Bokashi steel knife. I know a lot of things say organic on it. That is not deliberate. I prefer all my vegetables to be inorganic, absolutely drenched with GMO. So, if you can't get organic or one, it's not really that big of a deal. So let's get these vegetables chopped up and into our pot. All of our inorganic vegetables are now chopped up. It's time to get them into this seasoned oil. We'll stir these up. And don't forget, we have our curry seasoning. The water and moisture in the vegetables will kind of deglaze the pan and help get the remainder of those tasty bits off the bottom of the pot into the mixture. So we'll hit it with our seasoning and continue to saute away. We'll continue to let this cook down, then we'll hit it with our lentils. As with any type of curry, regardless of which ethnicity it derives from, this being my Jamaican curry, it's all about the layering of flavors. So this will continue to cook down, then the lentils will season again, then will be the goat. We'll season again, and we'll let that cook down for a couple of minutes, and then we'll deglaze the whole pot with the coconut milk. Add water, bring it to a certain level, and then we'll set it and forget it. Not unlike the Sicilian bean stew that we made. I'll include that link in the description. We're a couple of steps away from adding the coconut milk, but I did take it out of the can just so it'd be easier to pour in. Obviously, the coconut milk does not need to be organic. However, you do want to get just regular coconut milk, right? You don't want to get low fat. You don't want to get cream of coconut. You know, you're not making pina coladas here. The low fat or the lower fat, whatever, is really just coconut milk with more water added into it. So you're actually paying a premium for less product. Don't be a sucker. It's not going to really make a difference. So just stick with the regular coconut milk and you'll be fine. The vegetables have cooked down enough. It is now time for the lentils. Perhaps the epitome of that frugal life. Peasant food for the win. So our lentils are in. We're going to stir them in, incorporate them, make sure everyone's happy. We're going to hit this party with our seasoning again. Like I said, season, season, season. And it'll be almost time for the goat in a couple of minutes. Goat time. Getting there. Go. You want to get all that deliciousness in there. So we're going to give this a quick stir. Again, make sure everything is thoroughly incorporated. And then we'll hit it with our coconut milk to deglaze the pot. Get everything off the bottom of it. And then we'll merely set it and forget it. Alright, junkies. Coconut milk time. Let's pour this in slowly. You know, we don't want any crazy splash ups or some shit like that. We're gonna give this a stir. Again, we want to get all those tasty bits off the bottom of the pot. We're also going to need to bring this up to about here before we bring it to a boil and let it simmer. So what we'll do here is, you know, simply just fill up our pot that we used, rinse the plate off that had the goat sitting on it. Again, you want all those tasty bits in the stew. It should be good. And we'll come back here and add that. continue to stir. We'll bring it up to a boil. And once it comes to that temperature, we'll lower the heat and set it and forget it, but not before we again add those layers of flavor. Our star anise, a little bit of our seasoning, and that'll do it. Remember that this is going to cook down, right? It's a stew. We're going to set it and forget it. So a lot of the liquid is going to evaporate, and this is going to become much more concentrated. So we added more water, probably much more than we should have. You don't want the pot overflowing, making a mess. Probably should have used a bigger pot. It is what it is. You could see it's starting to bubble. So we're going to give it one last stir. Throw the cover on it. And again, as soon as, it comes to a boil, not a rolling boil, but just a boil like it's doing here, we're going to lower the heat to low, and we're just going to leave it for as long as you want to leave it for. Keep checking, tasting it, adding seasoning, and that'll be it. So we'll check in on this in a couple of hours. In case you are wondering, junkies, this is the mood that you want to set. You see it's a continuous boil, nothing too crazy. This is going to continue to cook down. Nothing has spilled over just yet. So it looks like we did a pretty good job making sure we filled it just enough. But we'll cover that and let that continue to cook down and get happy for a bunch of hours. This is after about 6 hours. You can see how much this has cooked down, and it will even continue to thicken up as all the starch from the vegetables, specifically the plantains and the legumes, the lentils, release the starch, and it will continue to thicken up. So we've taken the heat off, we've shut the heat off. So this is just going to hang out, and we'll plate it up in a little bit alongside our beer that we'll be washing down the curry goat with. Alright, junkies, our Jamaican journey has come to an end. As you can see, our curry goat is done. It is cooked all the way down. We got those lovely chunks of goat within the stew. Earlier today, I was asking around for the best IPA to pair with this stew. You're going to want something to cut through the spice of the stew. You got some really, really robust, extremely aromatic flavors. So you want to cut through that with something very citrusy, minty, essentially an IPA. So my good buddy Christian suggested that I pick up the Download double IPA from Cycle Brewing, another outstanding brewery here in downtown St. Pete. I'm not very keen on IPAs. I can't say I drink a lot of them. When I lived up in Brooklyn, in New York, I definitely had much more of an appetite for IPAs, but I have trouble putting them down here in Florida, I guess, because it's so hot or whatnot. Especially the double IPAs when you're dealing with high octane 8%. I mean, one of those, would put me to sleep. But it's a special occasion, so we decided to take Christian's outstanding recommendation. So that's what we'll be drinking. Cheers to you, St. Pete. As always, keep well, stay safe, and wash your junk.